So welcome to this full council meeting. I'll open with kia ora kia, e te whānau o te kaunihera o te aorere, whaia te mātauranga kia marama, kia whai taki kia whai mahi katoa, tū mai tū kaha aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa, tihei Māori ora. Do we have any apologies? We have Councillor Walker online, Councillor Butler online, Councillor Mackenzie, I think, online, and Councillor Greening online. Other than that, I think everybody else is in the room, so no apologies. And now we move to public forum. So we have two speakers registered to speak in public forum. So I'll just take them in the order in which they are registered to speak. So firstly, we have Marion Satherley, and then followed by Matthias Schaffner. Welcome, Marion. So far, so good. That's a long day. You never know what's going to happen. So over to you. So 5 minutes, I'll give you a nod at 4.5.
Let's hope it doesn't get that far. Firstly, I want to make an apology because I should have really brought this presentation to you last month, but I was actually away. So during the March 27th meeting, I heard the transport and compliance reports, which proposed the loss of public services such as toilets, rubbish bins, doggy-do bags to cut costs. I was horrified that the compliance team wanted to approve the increased service costs of $200,000, all this when TDC acknowledges its own financial strife and credit rating slip. I was perplexed how a councillor question could not be answered, yet the proposal was passed and increased spending approved. How can this occur when full information is not provided? Why wasn't this proposal deferred until the questions had been answered? Another councillor stated that the increase in registration fees would cover the proposed increased compliance cost. I am sure residents would expect increased fees would equate to increased service rather than reduced services and increased policing. Has council considered the additional costs offset caused by removing rubbish bins and doggy-do bags and the relationship of the potential increase of these items being dumped along a trail? Why is it we have never heard any cost-benefit data being provided when spending funds has been suggested for approval? How is the potential problem of overstaffed departments addressed? It makes no sense for this to be a task for staff, as doing so could risk their ongoing employment of themselves and their workmates. Business efficiency and effectiveness is the sole responsibility of an employer, manager, CEO. As the employers of the CEO, your role is to ensure he/she is running a tight, effective and efficient operation where wastage is minimised, staff work to a high level of effectiveness and efficiency in their procedures, outputs and time management, all while working within the business's financial means. You also have a responsibility to ratepayers who expect a high level of business efficiency and effectiveness. Anything less is negligent. As a past business owner, I know firsthand the experience of massive impact internal efficiency improvements can have on a business's overall performance. Unlike TDC, private businesses have to remain price competitive to survive, whereas time after time I witnessed TDC attempting to resolve financial problems by increasing rates, fees, and sometimes decreasing services. Continually increasing prices and decreasing services is an unsustainable band-aid rather than engaging long-term sustainable solutions. The side effect of TDC's mismanagement is extremely unhappy ratepayers. Many ratepayers who are aware of the risk TDC have placed them in through the LGNZ borrowing, where ratepayer property titles have been used as collateral and security on these loans. You have a responsibility to protect ratepayers and their properties while ensuring the CEO manages the performance of TDC in a manner that enhances services, keeps rates and fees within the rate of inflation. Staff and elected members need to be fully accountable for actions and decisions using public funds. One accountability action could be that the properties of the elected members and the staff are the first to be at risk if LGNZ loans are foreclosed. This way, financial accountability, as in private businesses, shifts to the personal responsible risk, therefore improving the level of diligence and scrutiny of all planning, funding, spending and decision-making. To regain ratepayer confidence, your actions need to be undertaken with thoughtful transparency and broad spectrum cost benefit analysis across all business activities. Your financial performance needs to make a U-turn. I recently heard that LGNZ dictates the CEO's employment agreement and responsibilities. If this is true, then TDC needs to withdraw the LGNZ membership and take back full control of the CEO's employment and their contract. LGNZ's ability to offer low interest rates does not compensate for financial losses due to lack of accountability. I and many others are looking to see massive effective and service performance improvements so as to truly deliver to those who have elected you to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. Just two clarifications. So just to be very clear about, so LGNZ has nothing whatsoever to do with CEO employment or any other employment relations.
That's correct.
LGNZ doesn't loan the council any money at all. The LGFA does. So that's the local government funding agency. And the third thing is ratepayers' properties are not security for any council borrowing. The council's ability to rate is the security. So there is no link between an individual private property and council borrowing. So just to be 100% clear.
Okay. Not really saying.
Next up, Matthias Schaffner. Welcome, Matthias. So again, 5 minutes, and I'll give you a nod at 4.5.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Mayor. Now that you, the council, made a single woman in her 60s homeless who was living in her vehicle, I just would like to know how you're going forward from now on in regard to people living in vehicles and mobile homes. And for this, let me share a few things for clarification. This woman parked her mobile home on my paddock, and there were no adverse environmental effects identified by your staff. And there was also no complaint from a neighbor. And what I heard from you, Mr. Mayor, a couple of times, when the landowner makes some money and put a tiny home on their property, then they should share this with the community and with council. In my case, I did not receive a single dollar from this woman who parked her mobile home on my property. And she was not a family member, and I didn't know her before she came to my property. So let me quote what you said, Mr. Mayor, last year. You said there are hundreds, many hundreds of people who are living in a whole range of different things that are either meet or don't meet the definition of building or vehicle, who are living in unconsented buildings, quote. And I don't agree very often with you, Mr. Mayor, but on this point, I absolutely do. There are hundreds of people out there who live in unconsented situations, vehicles, buildings, sheds, whatever. What are you going to do now? Do you make all these hundreds of people, your words, Mr. Mayor, homeless with your enforcement actions? Because you simply can. But if you don't make them homeless, would that be discrimination against this one single woman in her 60s if you leave all the other hundreds of people alone? And you, Councillor Maru, if I remember correctly, you said 2 days ago, the rules are the rules. And I understand this as the rules apply equally to everyone, I guess. Because it doesn't matter if there are environmental effects or not. And it doesn't matter if there's a complaint from a neighbor or not. And it doesn't matter if people are responsive and try to engage with council staff or not. And it doesn't matter if someone makes money or simply helps another human being in a housing crisis. No matter what, you run your enforcement actions to make people homeless. There's no reasonable explanation on the table anymore why you made this woman homeless, but should not apply the same standards to all of the other hundreds of people out there in the same situation. Or maybe, just maybe, you are finally willing to change the rules so that these hundreds of people won't get homeless. I think we don't have the time anymore to have just another workshop or wait just another year for central government to change something, or maybe they don't change something. I would really like to have a statement from you, Mr. Mayor, or anyone else in this room, or staff, or Ms. Ray. What are you going to do now with this situation? And if you don't want to answer my question, okay, I'm used to this, then maybe you want to answer the question from my children. 3 years ago, my daughter asked Ms. Ray in an email, how would you feel when your privacy is invaded? She never received an answer to that. And the background was that instead of asking a simple question, is someone living in the mobile home, you put our property under surveillance for more than 1 year. It seems to me a bit of unreasonable. And just this week, my other daughter, she's 4 years, she asked why the woman has to leave now. And I couldn't give her a good answer to that question. I mean, the absurdity is that the mobile home can stay there at the exact same place, no modifications required whatsoever. Only the person has to leave. And she also asked a very interesting question for a 4-year-old, if her parents would need to go to jail if we keep the person there and let her live in her own vehicle. And also to that, I couldn't give her a good answer. Maybe you can give her an answer to this question. That would be highly appreciated to get finally some answers from anyone, because there are a lot of people out there, hundreds, as you said, and there are a lot of questions, especially now that we have the case. It's reality. We cannot look away anymore. You made one woman, a single woman in her 60s, without income, homeless. That's real. And it's also real that there are hundreds of people out there in the same situation. So maybe someone wants to give an answer to the community or to the wider public. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Schaffner. That draws us to the conclusion of the public forum. So we'll now move on with the balance of the meeting. So next up, we've got minutes to be confirmed. So there are a number of sets of minutes. So we will start with the 20th of March. Someone prepared to move the receipt or otherwise? Councillor Kinnemont, seconded. Councillor Mailing, all in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. The meeting of the 8th of May. Councillor Mailing, seconded. Councillor Maru, all in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. The 16th of May, Councillor Dowler, seconded. Councillor Kinnemont, all in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. The 27th of May, Councillor Maru, seconded. Councillor Dakey, all in favour, please say aye. The 4th of June, Councillor Mailing and Councillor Dowler, all in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. The 5th of June, Deputy Mayor Bryant, Councillor Kinnemont, all in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. And then there's the confidential minutes of the 20th of March. Move Councillor Dakey, seconded. Councillor Kinnemont, all in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. And the confidential minutes of the 5th of June. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Right, that draws us to the conclusion of the approval of the minutes. I should have done declarations of interest. Councillor Hill.
In relation to Aorere Pa, I have an interest. And in terms of the Anaweka Waka project, just that I'm on the working group that's working away at that. It's not really a personal interest, but I guess I'll say that.
Yeah, so you just want it noted. Yep, good as gold. Thank you. Right, so now we have a presentation from NRDA. So welcome, Fiona. So an update Sarah Jane. So overview of the 6 months report and update of statement of intent. So I will hand over to Sarah. You.
Yep.
Welcome.
Thanks, tēnā koutou katoa. Thanks for having NRDA here today to present our 6-month report and update you on progress on our SOI for this year. I'm Sarah Jane Ware, the chair. I'm joined by Fiona Wilson, our CEO, who's going to give you all the information. Also Craig Booty, who is in charge of our destination management, and Lauren Richards. I'm not sure if you've met Lauren yet. She is our new CFO. So thanks for having us, Fiona.
Thank you, Kira. Nice to see you all. This is to formally present on the 6-month report, which ended 3rd of December. So obviously that's a little while ago now. And also to formally let you know any changes to the SOI. So this is the first year of the 3-year SOI. So we're just at the beginning of it. I'll touch on the SOI at the end, but I thought it'd be more useful to talk to activities to date rather than cutting off at the 30th of December, given we're now 30th of June nearly. So thank you. Should I? Thank you.
This one?
Just the one, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So it's a bit of an overview on that slide. So essentially, the activities which you've obviously got the 6-month report in your pack and the updated SOI. They essentially deliver against the main areas in terms of advocating for regional investment, strong reaching tourism and promotion campaigns, supporting business growth directly, industry education connections, partnering to support key sectors, and supporting events. And in terms of advocating for regional, I'll just do sort of an overview. In terms of advocating for regional investment, that briefing for ministers document, which we update each year, continues to be a key document to put forward a combined voice in terms of what our priorities are, opportunities and challenges for the region, whether that's when we're hosting ministers, supporting the submission of the regional deal, when we put on the government's development forum. So we use that as a consistent one, and it's not just us, it's our stakeholders use it as well. So it's really important we keep that. In previous years, Port Taraco was the consistent priority. In the 24 version, the Nelson Marina Master Plan, the hospital and the Hope Bypass, key priorities. We're currently working, and we're working with your teams to put forward the, if you like, shovel-ready projects that are ready for investment and will shift the dial in terms of productivity. So we should have that out in July. And then what we do when we have that is we flood every minister's office with it. We send them tailored information in terms of where it's relevant to their portfolio. We invite them to come to the region to look at the region, or we ask for invitations to their offices to present it to them. In terms of the, I guess, one of the projects I particularly wanted to mention was, we did do under that, got the Waimea Dam briefing under that. That stays as a priority in terms of the funding structures. And one piece of work we did last year was to do a comprehensive summary of that structure, which Will and Mayor Tim have been back and forth with ministers on since. So thank you for your championing of that. Tim. In terms of supporting businesses directly, so there's a wee change. I had an error in that. We haven't put 180k into businesses. It's $1 million into businesses. So the Regional Business Partner Program is the key program for us. We secure that through government. We run it for Hull of Te Tauihu for the top of the south. For many years, it's been a key avenue for us to work directly with businesses, particularly the high growth firms, but also supporting management capability into a raft of smaller companies. Activity to date is one-on-one with 180 businesses and $1 million into funding, not 180k into those. Really good news is we just had that extended for another 2 years through to June 27. We're a little bit concerned that it was one of the programs that might be reduced under the change of government. But with the, you'll have seen in the news about Callaghan winding up, but the function's all gone into MB now, so that continues. In terms of supporting future skills and workforce, we have been lucky enough to have the Education to Employment programme through government for the last 4 years.
That does come to an end at 30th of June. It's which is disappointing, but we'll keep working with MSD to see what other programs we get to support that. We've engaged, as I've said on the slide, about 600 students and 130 businesses through that this year to date. And most recently, and industry career days into construction, aquaculture, forestry, hospitality, right across the board, oversubscribed in terms of the number of high school students from all the high schools in the region. That's Nelson Tasman, not Te Tauahu, into those industry days. And most recently had a really successful career day for Fantastic Futures, which had about 130 students, another 30 businesses. So it's actually, and look, with the programme stopping, we are now under our wider schools work, particularly sectors like construction, forestry, aquaculture, looking at how we continue that engagement for that future workforce with the high school kids. I'll come back to the Mahi Tahi one in a moment. The Blue Economy one, you're familiar with the Moana Nui Blue Economy Cluster. We're continuing to support that as a partner. There's about 34 businesses involved that, and that's really accelerating collaboration between them, getting in external investment interest into them, and that's been running as an independent cluster. Food and beverage. So we've been showcasing, we took about 11 businesses down to the Christchurch food show, to the 10,000 foodies at the food show in April. We're really building the food stories to really support our food and beverage sector. Run about 20 of our food and beverage companies through AI innovation training. Next year, we really want to keep the region on the map as a destination for culinary tourism. We've got new itineraries in our tourism aspect for that, but really want to profile for all year round, particularly that seasonality. It's a big draw card. Under the visitor economy, we will send you shortly a briefing on how the season's gone for the tourism sector, in terms of and where the opportunities and challenges are. But just as an overview of activity, so we do rely heavily on our business partnerships for that program. Craig manages that program, and his team, really real champion for the sector. About 56 businesses this year, about 144,000. So we're really back where we were pre-COVID in terms of that, the sector partners directly for the tourism programs. We should really keep working at that and show them they're getting value for money for that. So we've got a very comprehensive prospectus which Craig has developed in terms of profiling. Really encouraging this year, Craig's doing the rounds, talking to all the businesses to get the new members, a good lot of new business coming on as gold partners, particularly appreciative of the international profiling that they get. So hosting, seasonality is a big challenge for us. So our domestic visitor campaigns really have to target that autumn, spring line. We've got a new pitch we take with our seasonal campaigns, which is Feel the Warmth of Nelson Tasman. So it applies at all times of year. Had a direct 7,000 partner referrals to websites through those campaigns. If you're in airports during that time, you would have seen them up in the screens, deliberately targeting places that are needing to feel the warmth at that time of year. Internationally, a big focus is working with Top of the South and Tourism New Zealand as partners. We really have to piggyback on them and partner for scale. The team hosts international tour operators. So it's been about 130 altogether hosted into the region. So that's taking them out into business or holding events that our businesses come and meet them. Just very recently, Donna was up at Trends and had one-on-one meetings with 60 inbound tour operators. So it's really getting us under in the awareness. Obviously, Able Tasman is the big draw card, but we want to sell them the wider benefits of the region, and the companies come with us to that as well. So Wilson Able Tasman's, Why Not Wilderness, they were up there at Trends with them. Events, we've been lucky enough to have the Regional Events Fund for the last 4.5 years through government. That will stop, unfortunately, next week. It's brought about $16.4 million into the region. It's been great post-COVID getting us through. Events are really important for the region, and it's that seasonality. We part of that was our business event function. So we have actually Nelson Council are diverting a small amount of their funding from their Economic Events Fund so we can keep going the business events, because obviously a big part of that is also we want them to have extended days around the region. Craig manages a mountain biking cluster. So that's really profiling the region as the premier mountain biking destination. We've got the great trails. We're one of the 5 top gold rated destinations in the world for mountain biking. So we really want to piggyback on that. We know there's about an $18 million gap in what we could be getting through more mountain biking. So when we do the let's skip back to that point. And look, 70,000 visitor guides into 200 locations, and we can't keep up with demand for those. So it's the sector is bouncing back slowly after COVID. We've still got a bit to go, particularly in spend, and so still keep working at that. In terms of digital, we have got a new website. It's been really effective, in terms of connection straight through to operators instead of our media followers. The numbers are really impressive. But I just want to there's a sector. So I just want to mention the Mahi Tahi Tasman. So NRDA, NMIT, and the Nelson Chamber have a partnership, which is the Mahi Tahi CoLab. Most of you will have been to the CoLab in Nelson. We've had events. It's a co-working space. It's got startup programs and space for innovation. So for quite some time, feedback from business has been, can we do something similar in Tasman? We've been working well with Pip in the back there in terms of looking at locations. Really excited that hopefully spring we'll be able to open Mahi Tahi Tasman in Mapua. It's on Stafford Street. It's been in response to local feedback in terms of we want one, and this is what we want from the area. It will be a not-for-profit. It's a co-working space, very much on the same model as the CoLab in Nelson, and under the same trust board. So, really keen to spread the word about that. We've got a good waiting list. We're keeping in touch with the businesses for that, and really hoping for a spring opening, and we'll be getting all along to that if that happens. So that'd be really exciting. And one area of the team's work, which we ironically don't tend to talk about very much, is the amount of work that goes into media pitches and partnerships. And this is through things like Cura Magazine and travel guides and back to Tourism New Zealand. We set a target for ourselves this year of $1 million in equivalent advertising value, because that's a really good figure. The extra work for our digital focus for our website, we're really, really pleased. We've got $4 million in EAV. And the reach of these, like $78 million impressions and reads, is the profile it's given to this region. So when you see these articles in Cura Magazine when you're on the plane, that's our teams that generally pitch those and put those in. We've just put a bit of a sample there. But one example I want to mention is you'll have heard about the Minecraft game. So Minecraft, if you're not familiar with it through yourselves or your kids or your grandkids, it's played by over 170 million players worldwide. Tourism New Zealand identified that 70 million of those want to come on New Zealand, are interested in a holiday in New Zealand. And so they've worked with film companies and mana whenua and industry to develop the first country-based game as a spin-off to the game, launched at the same time as the film, which was also filmed in New Zealand. And so Donna and our team worked with Tourism New Zealand for 12 months to pitch this region to be one of 6 in New Zealand to one of the regions filmed. So we go your own little game, and you can go on the Walker and go to Split Apple Rock. And we thought $4 million was great in terms of EAV. It's been blown out of the water because the March to May figures from Tourism New Zealand for this region alone is 8.7 million on top of the 4 million that we've got through that game. So the reach that these have is sort of incredible, and that's just started. Leveraging that, so the team hosted 10 influencers from 6 countries recently. One of those influencers has a TikTok following of 11 million. So it's the profile. So I think kind of look out really in terms of what's coming from that. We also, Alex and the team developed our own Nelson Tasman Minecraft itinerary. So if you go onto our website, you'll be able to see the Walker and see the Split Apple Rock and have your own itinerary. So keen gamers or film watchers that come here can watch their own itinerary. I just want to go back one slide and just mention something. I talked about the Regional Business Partner Programme. Now I've put a QR code there because please do go into our website, because in there is quite a nice reel of regional companies who've been working with that programme. Companies like ProLam or Trinder or Tasman Bay Foods, and they just send a bit of a story. And look, it's in part to tell government the value of doing this for the region, but it's also some nice stories in there. And the other QR code is the Explore Nelson Tasman webpage. So please do take a look for you and also anybody who might be on the call today. The last thing I was going to mention was our statement of intent. Look, this is it's just to let you know we've been through it. We've checked for any key issues. Essentially, it's maintaining delivery focus and maintaining currency. It's been updated for the latest regional economic profile. It's keeping focus in terms of those core areas of attracting resources, capability building and collaborating. It does note the end of the regional event funding and the education to employment funding. But apart from that, it's keeping the business going. So thank you very much. And thank you for your support. And also want to thank your team because they're great partners for us. Thank you.
Yeah, that's all looking very positive going forward and from working from a very positive base going forward. So I think that'll be a great benefit to the region. You're happy to take one or two questions for a few minutes? Councillor Hill.
Thank you. Impressive, isn't it, really? You know, we talk about bang for buck, and I feel like that, you know, the reach that you're getting in the various ways that you're doing it, you know, creatively, I think to me is very good. When you talk about the $18 million gap in terms of mountain biking, what is that gap?
That was a couple of years ago. Bill did a review of the benefit we're currently getting from our mountain biking. And then they looked at if we really did more promotion with it and we built up and we've got better connections, full trail access, because at that time there was repairs being made after the floods. At full bore, I suppose, they're saying you could realise another 18 million for the region. So, you know, working with the cluster to say, right, how do we position our hospitality providers to have mountain bike lock facilities and wash facilities? How do perhaps our taxis or our transport winds position themselves to carry mountain bikes? You know, what's our accommodation provider? Like really positioning our region for it, and also selling ourselves. You know, we know we're known internationally but we want to tell that story. So it's really that gap between what they think we're realising now and what we could be.
Yeah, can I just ask, in terms of your website, I had a look at it last night actually, and you know, if there's some organisation or business in Golden Bay or somewhere else that wants to be included, you know, is that something that just gets adjusted and grows, or who gets to be on there? What's determined those that are on there?
So we don't. So the if there's logos of businesses, it'll be because they're a partner of one of the programs. We don't list every business, obviously, but we do have links into business information. Really, it depends what the program is they want to be involved with. So I'd encourage them to get directly in touch with us.
So in terms of the places to go tab, and you go on there, and then if I look up, I could look up, say, Murchison, just to humour the chair who's about to lose his job. You know, it's got places to visit, but also businesses, and then you can go on there and their website will come up, or a booking link. Like, it's very effective, isn't it? Lovely images. How do people get to be on there?
So if a business wants to list on there, they can get a free listing. That's all good. That's fine. But if they want to get a higher enhanced listing, then we encourage them to join our destination partner promotion program. So they'll get a higher billing and get more referrals. So we'd love to have a conversation with any businesses that are keen to get additional promotion.
Yeah. And what might they pay for that?
We have 3 tiers: a bronze, silver, gold. At the bronze level, it's $795. So that gets them enhanced website listing, and they get to join our strong network of tourism partners. We have networking training events. They can get together and upskill, and they also get communications from us. So they're the first to know what's going on in the region and first cap off the rank for any opportunities to have any media come visit them. So yeah, I think it's good value, and we've seen some good results from those partners that come in and join. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Tim. And it's probably a follow-on from Councillor Hill in terms of, so the eyesight networks, if they're members of those, are they automatically integrated to here, or is it still 2 separate? So if I belong to the Tweaker Promotions, do I automatically get flagged through here or not?
No, they're very separate programs. Yeah.
Okay. Because it seems, and I don't want to be too judgmental, but it seems that the reach is more powerful for this network. I just wonder, since my colleague in Golden Bay is about to lose their eyesight, whether that is that time. The other bit, accommodation capability. I guess I'm specifically interested in Motueka because I don't think we've got much left. But when we look at events and target events in the region, what is our capacity to actually, what's our number in terms of the size of the event that we can comfortably hold in Nelson, Tasman currently?
I'll let Craig talk about the hotels particularly, but I would say in the lead up to whether or not we were going to be hosting the Te Matatini, which obviously hasn't happened, but we actually did run an audit of the whole region in terms of what our capacity was to host that, and found that we could do that. Obviously, the needs of that event have different types of groups. Some would want full hotel, and some would want marine, some would community hall. But actually, we did a full piece to look at what our capacity was, and we were confident that we could support, that we could work that. And then obviously that's huge scale and over several days in different groups. But in terms of being creative with our accommodation, that wasn't the reason that we couldn't host it in this region. Look, we do hear always that there's demand for more. We also need to work on smoothing the seasonality out. So those accommodation providers we do have full business all year round. And actually for some of them, that's where these events come in terms of keeping the seasonality. So it's kind of two-armed. Yes, we need more, and we hear some of our tour operators say, you need more accommodation, but we also need to be working on smoothing it out so the existing accommodation we providers aren't challenged with that drop off.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything further? Councillor Kinnemont.
Thank you, through to me. Just a quick one. Mahi tahi, digital nomads are going to be a thing of the future, I feel. People working from home, but they also need like-minded minds together. So we've got a hub in Nelson, a hub in lovely Mapua. Are you looking at setting up anywhere else like Wakefield, Brightwater, Golden Bay?
Not at this stage. We don't have it. So the trust, the Mahi Tahi Trust that runs that is it's not for profit, and it's on the bit of a bony one, but it's really worked in Mapua where the demand has come. It has the feedback's come in. It's focusing Mapua area that people travel in. Digital nomads, absolutely. So on the launch of the Mapua one, the Mahi Tahi Kola will be launching a digital nomad campaign, if you like, to really showing that we have got great. I mean, we're a great destination for that now, but this will add to that. So absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I will draw it to a conclusion there. Thank you very much for coming in and providing the presentation and being available to answer questions. So thank you. Right, so we'll move on with the balance of the agenda. So I'll take a bit of a change in order simply because David Stevenson's on Zoom. So we can come back to him, and we have a number of people in the room. So I know, Phil, you're here for item 7.3. We also have a number of people here to speak in relation or to as part of the discussion on the Anaweka Waka. So we'll take that next, and then Mike Van Enter, I think you're there as well. So we'll do it in that order. So Phil, over to you.
Good morning, kia ora tātou, councillors. Essentially, my report is about trying to fix an error we made during subdivision last year, where a strip of road to vest got vested as road reserve by mistake. And I think many of you will know that people use the term road reserve quite informally or casually to refer to our roads, where legally it's not road reserve, it's legal road. But it's a very common expression. In fact, I was talking to someone just before the meeting outside, one of our staff members, and they use that term for the whole road network, but it's not. So hopefully my report is brief, but hopefully it's clear enough that we made a mistake. It's just unfortunate. Trying to fix it, it will cost us a small amount of money for the LINZ fees. I hope no more than $1,000 because of the fees that everybody has to pay to go to LINZ and get the conveyancing and the title cancelled and so on. But the Reserves Act provides this quite straightforward process, but it does require a resolution of council to progress it.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for your report. It is fairly clear. Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move. It's really straightforward. It just puts the matter right and shouldn't be too much discussion. So happy to move.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis is happy to second. Is there any further? If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Phil. Happy to observe from the back. All good. Kia ora. Please, over to you.
Kia ora koutou. The purpose of this report is to really get a gauge from council as a whole whether the proposed site of the Anaweka Waka facility is worth progressing by the working group. And I will just acknowledge the members of the working group that are sitting in public forum who have done a lot of work to get us to this stage. So what the working group today is seeking is agreement in principle, subject to future consultation and subject to more information coming to council around how any facility would be built, owned, maintained, those kinds of things. So happy to take any further questions you may have.
Thanks, Leith. Again, it's fairly self-explanatory in terms of the information that's been provided. So open up for questions, comments, feedback or moving. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy to move. And just noting number 5 that there's some more discussions in terms of what the end model looks like, but in terms of the motions in front, I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Dowler.
Yeah, just happy to second.
All right, thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thanks, Chair. You know, since the day the waka was found, actually, or maybe a week later, you know, maybe a bit longer than that, some months, looking at Margie. But, you know, there's been a lot of thought and discussion and investigation go into trying to find a site to better build something that's suitable and in the bay. So that's like over a 12-year period now. And it's not been an easy thing to find somewhere. There was a building that's mentioned in the report in town that the ministry took a lease on. We thought they could do something with that. So just want to let you know, I guess, that a lot of thought has gone into how to proceed, I suppose, and options really looked into to some degree. And I can say that it's, you know, this has landed in the timing that it has, and I think in a good way and in a good relationship with the museum people. And it's sort of ideal in a lot of ways. So your support for it in principle would be much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Is there anything further? I think it's at some, I can't remember when, but it's sometime not that long ago, but some time ago, we had a presentation with an artist impression and a bit of a concept around the potential, you know, not that that's set in stone in any way, shape or form, but a bit of an indication of this location and how it might work and how it could look. And I think coming out of that conversation was the encouragement to obviously work with those responsible for the Waka itself and council staff to see whether we could get to this point. As Leith mentioned, bit of water to go under the bridge, so to speak, and further work to do, but to provide the support and confidence to enable that to all kind of move on with a kind of positive thing. And I think the indications at the time is that it potentially could be a great use of the site and be a really fantastic addition to Golden Bay and Takaka particularly. So look, I'm certainly happy to support. Yeah, I've noted Celia's hand. So before I come to put the resolution, I will go to Councillor Butler.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks very much. And I think overall the Golden Bay community are supportive of this progressing in this way attached to the museum. I think it would be good to try and gauge the feelings of the Golden Bay community a bit more about it, because they're, and I know that we're just at a very early stage, but most of them don't really know anything about it. So just my question is whether or not and maybe this may not be the right forum to ask, but whether or not there will be some consultation in the future. I'm assuming that there will, but I think some more information for the community might be a good thing.
Please.
Through the chair, yes, absolutely, councillor. There's going to be lots of consultation and information going out to the community around what the waka is, and it's really important for the working group and iwi that we bring the community along with us on this one.
Okay.
I think that's quite clearly covered in item 3, agreeing in principle subject to future consultations. So I'm pretty sure that will be covered off. All right. With that, if there's nothing further,
Well, thank you. Just thinking about NRDA, you know, and how we get people into our smaller areas too, our settlements, you know, this has the potential to really be a big draw, I think, for the region certainly, and certainly for Golden Bay. So I think we're on a winner here.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Hill. I will look to put the resolution unless Councillor Maru wants to add anything. If not, I will put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Leith. Thanks, Jenna Maggie. And so now I'm changing the thing again because apparently David Stevens is on Zoom for a reason because he has somewhere else to be. So Mike, you've been bumped again. Sorry, apologies. And Jamie, you'll probably just come down for that as well. So apologies to you too. So we'll go back to David in relation to the Waste Review Working Party, Tasman Waste Management and Minimisation Plan.
Thank you, councillors. Happy to take this report as read. And just to advise you that Nelson City Council adopted the waste plan at their meeting on the 5th of June. So happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, David. Deputy Mayor Brian.
Thank you, Mayor Tim. No questions at this stage, David, just other than to thank you and the working party of councillors and staff from both parties for the work they've done around this. It's really good to see this progressing again, and I'm happy to move the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brian. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to follow on from Deputy Mayor in terms of acknowledging Councillor Harold Stallard as the chair and Christine McKenzie as the deputy chair, and happy to second. I and my fellow councillor, Councillor Dakey.
Excellent. The one person in the room who's sitting right next to you. Righto. So is there anything further? If not, I will put the resolution. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you, David. So now, Mike, Jamie.
Oh, very well.
Over to you, Mike.
Yeah, I'm happy to take the bulk of the report as being read. I have a minor amendment in the recommendations in the bullet 2. We refer to Chapter 7 of the Tasman District Consolidated Bylaw. Advise that the bylaw is no longer in the traffic control devices bylaw is now a standalone bylaw. So that text should just be struck through as it is up on the screen. Happy to take the rest of the report as read and answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Deputy Mayor Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question from myself, firstly, Mike, just in relation to the Great Taste Trail, which is near the end of the report. Can you just expand that a little bit? I understand it's to keep motorcycles off the trail, but how are you going to enforce that or relay that to the community? Because I know it's an issue in a number of areas that I drive through, and it's certainly not something easy to control at all.
Yeah, I guess moving the shared path status of the Great Taste Trail into this bylaw means it remains as in our bylaw that the police can enforce in the land transport rule. Yeah, I guess the physical treatments to control the types of vehicles that remains unchanged. So we have a number of squeeze barriers and at places of concern.
I might just add. Really, it's more about ensuring the police have all the tools available to them. The police have specifically requested that we do this in order, for there to be as many tools available for enforcement as possible. I expect there would still be challenges.
Yeah,
yep.
I agree. But it will help in those problematic areas around Wakefield where we've had gates on and off frustrating, and it doesn't seem to stop the motorbikes whether the gates are there or not. So one of the things I would like to see is the gates removed. Now they have this power. If that was possible. I'll give someone else a technical moving, unless you really want me to.
No, I'm happy for you to move it or somebody else.
I'm happy to move it.
All right, I've got Councillor Dakey and Councillor Dowler.
Thank you, through the mayor. Same topic, Tasman Taste Trail, quite investment in signage and barriers, but with the signage proposed, just to double check before we go down that road, print them all, that it really relates to what we're looking to do in that area. So the one that's shown in the document is a person walking in a bike. A question whether maybe we need no motorbikes or whatever, so it's really clear with the signage just before we go through and start rolling them out, that the signage reflects what we want the area to be, so that people can't weasel around the signage as well. So just a thought there. Thank you.
I guess that shared path sign is the land transport rule sign for a shared path, so that does legally mean no motorbikes. But on from that 141 have also specifically requested that additional sign. So that's an additional restriction in our bylaw on top of the shared path restriction.
Yeah, I agree. There'll be some cases where just having that little extra message on the sign will be effective. Yep.
I think that one of the big challenges in this space is the difference between a motorbike and a bike now is rapidly shrinking. I mean, it always used to be motorbike, motor, engine, push bike, pedals. There's now this massive chunk in between. So you can get an electric motocross bike, which is like one step removed from the top level electric mountain bike or e-bike. And so in terms of enforcement and compliance and all of these challenges, it's become incrementally more difficult to determine some things are very obvious. There's always the very black and white ends of the spectrum, but there's now an awful lot of stuff in between. And then that gap's going to continue to shrink as technology means that the difference between a bike and a motorbike continues to change. So I agree. I mean, the less ambiguous we make the signage, the better. There's obviously a legal requirement to have certain signage that reflects the status of the path, but then in the locations where there are specific issues, I think something much clearer needs to be provided as well. So I think that message has definitely been heard. So Councillor Kinnemont, then Councillor Dowler. You go, Mike.
It's through you, Mr. Mayor. Page 172, clause 5.12. Mapua Drive, recreation parking management. You want to restrict the parking of vehicles on Mapua Drive near the Mapua School. Are we up with it? Yep. Why? Reading this here is that it's nearly full most days. I would seriously question that, and even your own pamphlet shows only 2 vehicles parked in that bay.
Yeah, so through the chair, background to that one. So there's a property owner whose driveway is opposite that parking area. So I've advised that occasionally when there are a lot of vehicles parked there with the for sale sign on, that can impact their ability to get in and out of their driveway, especially if they're towing a large trailer. It's also been noticed that when there are a lot of vehicles parked there with the for sale sign on, they're often there for quite a while, and that impacts the ability of other people to use those parking spaces. It's prime parking. It's right by Aranui Park. It's close to a place where parents would often drop off or pick up their kids. The case for it to
to be restricted so that we're telling people that's not an appropriate place to just leave your car for sale. Let's use it as more productive parking. That's what it's about.
If I could just follow on from that through Mayor.
You may.
There's obviously a need for somewhere in Mapua where we can park all our cars up that we've got for sale.
Have you not heard of Trade Me? You know, the way that most people sell their cars these days, like online. The days of having to park it somewhere and stick a sign in the window, not necessarily still entirely necessary.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I gather there's other options, but obviously there is a need separate to Trade Me and other places where people want to park a car and put a for sale sign on, and it's a phone number. So by doing what we're doing, are we not just pushing them into another location?
Yeah, so I guess that's the decision, I guess, being questioned on page 189, the diagram. You're right, the aerial photograph shows only 2 cars parked there. The example pictures, there's 7 cars for sale plus a caravan. And as Jamie mentioned, those cars are parked there for numerous days until they're sold. So that's the decision if we want to use council road space to have people park their cars for a long period and for sale, or do we want the parking space to be people that are going to the school, the shops, the park, or even park and ride type activity from there?
There's a small risk of whack-a-mole, right? The only other time where the council had really put in place a similar resolution in its bylaw is on Salisbury Road, back when there was parking there. And I don't think we noticed a particular sort of flight of all of the people who were parking their cars for sale there to another particular spot. It just kind of, Lower Queen Street became a little bit, but so I guess there's a risk of chasing an issue to another location, or it might not if there's no other suitable locations nearby. I guess only time will tell if this restriction gets implemented.
Okay, Councillor Kinnemont.
Okay, I understand what you're saying here. So could we just get our heads around, maybe if we can restrict them here, could we say to them, well, you could park around the corner on Aranui Road on the frontage of Aranui Domain. So
that's on my house.
No, it's a domain, it's a park. So I'm just trying to say to you by all means say no here, but give them an alternative around the corner, something like that.
Well, I presume if there's other parks on the other side of the road and they're not restricted, then they can shift their car to the other side of the road to the parks opposite Aranui, the angle parks that sit alongside Aranui Domain, which is the most obvious place they'd put them if they can't put them where they are currently putting them.
I would not really want to go encouraging that kind of parking behaviour. It's never something the council has been involved in, and it's not really our place to provide a car sales yard.
Right. Okay. Councillor Dakey.
Yeah, mine's on the same topic. Just with the enforceability of it, what legal requirements do you have to be able to issue a ticket for someone selling their car? Because I imagine there's some fairly crafty ways to get around it. So I just wonder why you didn't consider a time limit here, or whether you're going to do a reverse, review it, and then consider if it's working. Because what is the requirements to consider if someone is actually selling rather than just parking there for sale? It would be up to the judgment of the enforcement officer who's attending, if they're issuing an infringement. Time restrictions are a different tool, and depending on the restriction you implement, they can be more difficult to implement in a sort of a more remote location like that, because often your enforcement officer won't be visiting every 2 hours or we think the proposed restriction would address the issues that have been experienced there. Yeah, I'm happy with that because I actually do know, or I won't say it, but I think there is ways around it. But we'll be happy that people.
I'm sure there must be a million ways around it.
There is.
You put it on Facebook. You say my car's parked down here. There's no sign in the window. Just go and have a nosy.
That's why
Parked on.
That's why I ask you about
The
time.
whole. Gosh, I mean, I just love having these debates. Big important issues that we spend.
Well,
so I'm happy for it not to be in that. Like one person kind of requested it, one person opposed it. I'm not even sure why we're talking about it. But clearly, this is what happens. One person raises an issue, it ends up on a council agenda, and we spend 15 minutes discussing it.
Well,
like someone's moved it, but look, I'm equally happy for it to disappear. It seems like such a non-issue to me. So
just
if you want to make an amendment,
just to reply. It's still expensive to put it in. It does affect the community. We are allowed to spend time on it. We want to make sure the sign we're putting in works. Is going to achieve what we're trying to do. It's okay to debate these.
Someone move something different. That's what I'm just saying.
Well, having a second, but moving it if no one has.
If you want to leave it in there, leave it in there. Councillor Kinnamoth spoke passionately and questioned it. I'm just trying to check if you want to make a change to the resolution or not.
No, I just want a clarification that we'd actually be able to enforce what we're putting in, which sounds like we can.
Well,
so I'm happy to move.
I suspect the actual enforcement may be quite challenging. But no, I'm not going to move an amendment. I just want to move on. So it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Kinnamoth, after asking his questions, doesn't want to make a change to the resolution. I don't think.
It's my per, Mr. Chairman, sir. We all
Councillor Dowler.
Well, NZTA seem to be able to move them on by threats of prosecution on High Street, Motueka.
I'm sure if you put a sign in the window and make it very obvious that you're selling it, it's easy to enforce. I suspect if you just park it on the side of the road and put on the internet that you can go and if you want to have a look at it in person, just go and it's parked in such and such parking space. It's very difficult to enforce.
My question, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor, there's two questions.
Yes.
On I'll just use this one as an example, page 197, where you've got the shared paths Richmond deviation. Down the bottom, you've got, looks like GPS coordinates. And you've got an X and a Y and an X and a Y and probably a one end to the other on one side of the road and one end to the other on the other side. So they'll be the locations where the signs are put, I understand.
No, that's just the start and the end of the shared path designation.
Yeah.
So the signs will be located on site by the contractor and they need to do services locates and whatnot. But you're right, the signs need to be at the start and the end of a section of path.
Yep, that's fine.
But it's not dictated by those coordinates.
Okay, that's fine. So there's not a requirement for repeater signs every so many 100 metres or anything like that. That like the speed limit ones, if we get in on.
No, there's a recommendation for repeater signs, and there's a requirement for repeater signs after every stop and start of a path. So at every intersection, that's the one continuous section that doesn't require to have repeater signs. Okay. But we do find we'll get feedback from those people enforcing it. If they think the gap's too long, they'll request repeater signs to help with enforcement.
My last question is on the speed limit ones, it's $300 a sign. We were told to put in place. Is this a similar cost?
It is. I've allowed for slightly more than that. $300 is typically the cost of the sign on the post and placing it. But when you do services locates and you factor in remote locations, the cost of some signs is more and some signs is less. Yeah. But that's so use a slightly higher number.
We probably don't have temporary traffic management on the cycleway, though, do we? At least we have to. Do we have to temporary traffic manage the cyclists and the pedestrians?
In some locations.
In some locations.
It's just I didn't see a budget cost. So where's it coming from? How's it being covered? And over what period of time are these signs being put in place?
There is a budget, and Jamie, where's it coming from?
Yeah, so we do have existing budgets for what we call traffic services, which is signs and markings, as well as operational budgets for the Great Taste Trail. So we envisage that any of these costs will fit within existing budgets.
Thank you, Councillor Dowler. Does the mover want to add anything before I put the before I put the resolution? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. So we may, what do we got? Waimea Community Dam Industrial User Policy. Mike will go through hopefully this item and then we'll break. Welcome, Mike. So this is on page 261. Mike, over to you.
Through Mr. Mayor. This policy is necessary as the water augmentation agreement simply refer to obtaining council's written agreement in regard to industrial water use. Council has previously considered the matter of Will issuing shareholder water augmentation agreements that didn't include that particular restriction. Well, it subsequently amended their shareholder water augmentations have subsequently amended their shareholder water augmentation agreements. That's resulted in shareholders requesting how do they obtain the necessary council approval and what's the process. An advance copy of this policy was provided to both Will and Waimea Water Limited. The feedback I received has been included in the report. As a result of that feedback, I'm not recommending any changes to the draft policy, which you're considering today. Quite happy to take the report as read and answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Open for questions, comments, moving and or seconding.
Question,
yep.
Clarification.
Deputy Mayor Brian, and then Councillor Whaling.
Right, you just said the feedback you received in the report. Could you point to the paragraph because I couldn't find it? Maybe I misreading it, and at speed. Sorry, I should have let you know this one.
It says under 11 at the time of writing, no feedback has been received. Under 11.1.
My apologies, I've circulated and it was the feedback from Will. Essentially, they wanted to point out that the definition of ancillary industrial use that term isn't actually defined within the agreement, and that their concern was that at a future point in time, which was the intention within the policy, that ancillary industrial use could become industrial use. Obviously, if the scale of the use goes up over time, then we have the option under that policy to review that. The second point they made was they believe that some water users were already affiliated. Council has not agreed to affiliate any water users that have a shareholder water augmentation within Will. If a water user is on a council reserve or a council leased piece of property, then their consent can be affiliated by council because that's a carve out that's within the agreements. They were the matters that Will raised.
So there is a slight conflict between 11.1 and 10, which Mike's just effectively covered. So
other than not sure it uses the word auxiliary there.
So it does under 11, so under 10.1.2, it says the only other issue to raise in relation to the definition of ancillary activities, which is.
So what's the previous definition of auxiliary activities? Does it have a scale or? Sorry.
We in the policy we chose to use the definition that's used in places like the TRMP and a general, shall we say, dictionary definition. It's quite wide because it's very difficult in the policy or indeed in reality to be able to define everything that could possibly fall under the classification. Just allows the policy, the people interpreting the policy to have some guidance. As always, if there was a grey area, staff would bring a matter back to council.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mailing.
I'm happy to move this. It goes back in history.
over 20 years when I wasn't on council, and YWAC were involved with irrigators to first look at water augmentation. And it was irrigators and council and a number of other organisations, including iwi. It wasn't industrial users. So that's why I'm happy to support this.
Thank you. It's been moved, Councillor Mailing. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure that I totally understand the policy, but the significance of this, Mike, in terms of how it came up in terms of Nelson Pine's situation.
Yeah.
So is it still a significant decision in granting or not granting? So currently I see it's delegated to the GM of infrastructure, so it's delegated to Richard. How will the report back be signalled to council in terms of these are the decisions that we've approved or not approved or done?
In most instances, I would expect that these will be operational decisions.
Yes.
If, for example, decision related to a major user like Nelson Pine, then I would expect that to be reported back through the operations committee.
So how is that captured in the policy? Because once we give delegation's given.
It's not specifically referred to in the policy in that way. There is a level of expectation that staff will, when they see a policy matter that needs further consideration by council because of its nature, as we do with remissions, for example, on community organisations, the matters are referred back to council. Staff will be focused on ensuring that any agreement that's entered into does not jeopardise council's investment in the urban water supply and their investment in the dam.
And so I think I've got one last question. So is that the sole purpose of this policy, and does it preempt any other decisions that we would make that wasn't based solely on financial outcomes for council? I don't actually even understand the question I just asked, Mike. Maybe I'll let you. I guess my concern is that and not totally understanding all the different dynamics and levers within this. I get that it's an operational matter and the delegation is to a GM. My question is, how does that get reported back through of something that we've got this because there was a significant issue that came up, and so it's just a report back I'm interested in.
There are two reasons you have got this policy before you today. The first one was it was highlighted that what had entered into the arrangements and Nelson Pine Industry believed they had enough that they could put a ball field in. It would be affiliated because they have shares in Waimea Water Limited and a shareholder water augmentation agreement. And that's not correct. But also, Will pointed out, as we knew, the agreements refer to obtaining written approval from council. This is to codify that process. So everyone, including Nelson Pine Industry, knows there's a process in place. You've got a policy position. Policy position balances the needs of the applicant, but also the needs of council. And it's really focused mostly on making sure there is a process available for the very small number of people who are likely to apply for industrial use.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? If not, it's been moved and has been seconded. No, it hasn't been seconded. Someone put a second. Councillor Dowler. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. So we'll now break for 10 minutes and come back at 11. Which unfortunately for me is in my name, and more unfortunate for me, Robin's not here to help. So everyone's seen what the remits are. So there's two things we need to do. Firstly, whether we support or not the various remits, and we'll go through them in order, and then prioritise them. That's probably less vitally important in the grand scheme of things, and certainly it will be self-ordering if we don't support one, because clearly that won't be high priority. So I will start off with the item that relates to Remit 1, which is security system payments, which is proposed by the Far North District Council and Central Otago. don't feel no need to debate the merits or otherwise of these, because that's not really the point. It's simply a question of whether we approve or not. So if anyone has any questions, otherwise I will just ask for a show. Well, just do it on the voices to start with. So those in favour of that one, say aye. Is there one person? Well done, Councillor Ellis. No, I'm as those against. Okay, righto. So that is lost. So that is priority 5. The next item is improving joint management agreements proposed by Northern Regional Council.
I'm happy to support that, but I think it's the alcohol licensing that should be the priority.
Yeah, so we'll come back to prioritise. Yes, noted, Councillor Greening, I agree with you. So are you happy to move the support of joint management agreements?
Well, I can give you my indications, which I'm happy to support in this order: alcohol policy and joint management. I don't see why we would be seeking to get funding from government agencies that won't give it to us for school buses. They're probably better to sort that out themselves rather than local government sorting it out. An LG review, if LG and Z want to go there, great that they've got the money for it. But I thought they had some other priorities. So wavering on that one, and security systems have rejected.
Okay, so that's all good. So we've rejected security systems. I won't actually look for movers and seconders. I'll just get an indication of support or otherwise, and then we'll move the whole lot as either supports or rejects. So indication on the second one, improving joint management agreements. Councillor Greening's spoken in favour. So all in favour, aye. Against. So noted. So that one. So when we put all the resolutions, I'll get someone to move the whole lot at the end, and you'll just have either supported or rejected. Cool. The third one is alcohol licensing fees. I would imagine that this is largely supported. So in favour. So that would be supports. Aligning public and school bus services proposed by Nelson. There may be some more conversation around this. So I'm getting not supported. So just for my 2 cents to it, because I've been drawn into this a lot. And just so for clarity, there is a willingness, and my understanding is the Ministry of Education is willing, and Mayor Smith has done a lot of work behind the scenes to get a trial whereby we would receive all the funding currently allocated towards the running of school bus services, and we would manage it. Now, there are a number of caveats that we would wish to put on that funding in terms of the rules and regulations that we have to work under, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of water to go under bridge. A lot of water to go under a bridge. However, and there are large parts of the region, for example, Golden Bay, Murchison, Tapawera, outside the our in-bus routes, where the current arrangements would by and large just be rolled over and the contracts that have been entered into would be just run through. However, there is some significant issues where the school bus routes and the in-bus routes overlap, and there's a particularly acute issue around Mapua at the moment. The answer from the ministry has been to safety issues raised by parents and students to simply can the whole thing, which has excited some more. We're being drawn into this inevitably anyway, because we just are. So my personal view is not even considering it. I think we should consider it, but again, it's really over to the council to determine. I absolutely get the reluctance and the concern. It's certainly been raised with me by council staff as well, that we're taking on something that the ministry has been unable to solve. That comes with a lot of controversy, where people see it not delivering. And given that we're so overwhelmingly popular with everything that we do, taking on another thing that has the potential to make us less popular with a group of people is not necessarily something that we should jump at. So yeah, that's my view. over to other people. So other speakers, I've got Councillor Greening, Councillor Walker, and Deputy Mayor Bright. So, and I'll take others because this is probably the most significant issue that's potentially affects us.
Yeah, I don't see any benefit in taking this on. If anything, it's more administrative costs for us, which we're trying to reduce. I think the agencies need to sort it out. Happy that council, provide feedback to these central government agencies to sort it out. At the end of the day, if it's a contracting arrangement, then it will be a contracting arrangement with NBUS. We don't need to be involved. We don't need this resolution. We can pursue it without this. And I really don't see us necessarily wanting to take this on. I think Councillor King's raised some other issues around the political impact. But for me, it's just an administrative hassle that we don't need to get involved with. I prefer it's just contracted, if it is, to NBUS by Ministry of Education and NZ Transport once they've got their act together, and that's really what should happen.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Greening. Councillor Walker, then Councillor Butler.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Seems not just me that got a virus, but my laptop too. Thanks to Holly, I now have ways of connecting with you to hear you. I guess my biggest concern is if we put this forward and it doesn't come with funding, it doesn't come with resources, what does that look like for us moving forward? And are we sticking to our knitting by taking on the MOE?
Yeah, no, they're all great questions. And certainly in my discussions with Mayor Smith, I've made it abundantly clear, not only do we get all the funding that they can, which is a very large sum, we also get the administration, and we also do not have to comply with the arcane and somewhat ridiculous rules and regulations that currently bind the Ministry of Education and their management of the services. Because I've advocated strongly, promoted, written to ministers over multiple governments, requesting that they look at the framework and have singularly failed to achieve one iota of movement. So in the absence of some change to the overall management, my confidence that the ministry is going to change, amend, improve or adjust the current framework is absolutely zero. Now, whether this is the right solution or not, I'm entirely open. And, if the council determines not, I understand why we wouldn't, because it is potentially a bit of a nightmare. But just to be clear, it would be all the funding, none of the regulations, and effectively allow us to look at what is the best mix of public transport on those key routes between providing for students going to school alongside everyone else using the bus service for their own purposes. So that's only by way of clarity, not by way of lobbying. So I get the sense this is not going to pass, but which is fine.
Can I just? Oh,
yeah, no, sorry, Councillor Walker.
Yeah, sorry, just with the first remit, which I know that Councillor Ellis put her hand up to, and I know you've already moved on from that, but I hadn't got my technology with Holly sorted in time, is that, I didn't support the security cameras because actually what I believe we should be doing is supporting and endorsing the harassment side, because, you can look at a security camera, but often that footage is a bit late. So that's why I didn't, I didn't get to speak, but I don't support the security camera. But I'd be very keen for this council to lobby to push the harassment of our elected members and what protection is available for us. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, and noted, Councillor Walker. Right, so carrying on with relation to public and school buses, Councillor Butler.
Thank you. I think that in rural areas there would be benefits for this because there could be more flexibility. It's the lack of flexibility in rural areas that is a problem. So I'm fully in support of us supporting this remit.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Mackenzie.
Yep, thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm fully in support of it as well. There's problems with the current system. We need to be open to new ways of doing things. And if you're not at the table, and be willing to actually have some initial conversations, then you're just stuck in the status quo. So I think that it's not a decision that we're going to do anything. It's a decision to actually start some discussions. So I'm supportive of that.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Dowell, and then Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Yeah, I'd support it just on the wording, just that LGNZ advocate for the reform.
Okay, Councillor Bryant, Deputy Mayor Bryant, and Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just two or three things, and Tim by and large covered some of them. Certainly the legislation that they have to work under is problematic and has been for some time. My understanding, every government sees they're going to change it, but don't prioritise it in time and get it done. So that's a real issue around it that would need to be addressed if councils were to take on the system, because there's some really archaic rules around distances from schools you can pick up children and drop them off, and bizarre things like that. It's 1925 legislation, as I understand it. It's unbelievable. Nearly 100 years old and we're still working under that. The other thing to remember is that we have a lot more school runs in this district than our neighbours do. They only have a handful. We have over 50 operated by quite a number of operators, Golden Bay, Murchison, Tapua, and so it goes on. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do some investigation into this. The logistics of it will take quite some time to work for, and whether it comes to fruition, but at least if we get maybe a trial or investigate it with doing something positive towards rectifying the situation we have now that's led to the situation Mayor Tim talked about in Mapua, and which is really, as they've shown, they can change it if they really want to. But anyway, so I'm happy to support for that.
Okay, and I'll come back to a show of hands in terms of support or otherwise at the end, so we can be very clear where we're going with this, because it's now somewhat more even. Councillor Ellis, then Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Tim. I'm actually not in favour of this. I've had a good look at this. There are so many rules around what students are entitled to. I actually think that this could, in areas where there are a large number of rural students getting to school, that they have potentially could lose their right to transport to school. When I really dig down into this is a government problem. You're right, I agree. I understand what Nelson's trying to do, and agree that we need to find a solution, but I think this is a government issue. It's a government problem, and local government NZ has plenty to do, and this is going to take a massive amount of money to work through. And I don't think people are going to be better off because of it, because when have we ever wound up better off when government have given us a job to do and we're reliant on their funding to do it? So I don't support this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Ellis has just helped me get over the line. So in terms of, and it's the last part of what Councillor Ellis said in terms of, are we absolutely sure that we can do it better? And I get the 1925 and archaic rules, but my goodness, we've tried to change a couple of rules in this term that are archaic and hard to change as well. So we're equally a beast of rules and reviews and how you change things. So no, I'm not going to support this one, but I may be forced to, depending how you vote.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else want to speak before I just look for a show of hands who supports? So I will ask for those who support the remit, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against, just for clarity, 1, 2, Councillor Greening, 3, Councillor Mailing, 4. Yeah. All right, so so it's not resolution carried on. So, but we will note in the final resolution that is to be supported. Like, just bearing in mind, these are remits to local government. Yeah. No, we are not making decisions. The chances of any or all of these things, actually, if you look at the history of remits of local government and outcomes, the two things are. So Don't feel as though in voting or supporting or not any of these that actually anything much will change in any great hurry. Righto, so we now have, in terms of priority, I think it's fairly clear the alcohol one is at the top. And then the other one that we supported, which was joint management, is number 2. And the other 3, it doesn't really matter what order you put them in because we didn't support them anyway. In fact, do we even put them in there? No, they wouldn't be priorities at all, would they? No. Okay, so it's just 1 and 2. School bus one and joint management.
And alcohol.
Oh, and alcohol, sorry. Sorry.
I've got agreement 1, supported 2, supported 3.
Rejected. Oh, yeah, sorry.
We've got 8, 4.
Yep, for the school buses. Yep.
Supported that. That's just 3. And then agreement 5, review of local government.
Oh, review of local government arrangements. We haven't actually done that one yet. No, again, this is one of the issues with remits. I mean, there is an explanation contained within it, but Elgin works with government and councils review current local government arrangements, including the functions and structures. I don't even know what it means. And the government's doing it anyway through various bits of legislative change, including RMA, including local water done well. I think it's just a thing that's happening anyway. So support, not a great deal. Against, largely, so that's a reject as well. Right, so now we have the substantive resolution, which means rejects, supports, rejects. And just the priority is just alcohol at the top. Improving joint management arrangements 2nd, because largely supported, and then 3rd would be because it was more debatable. We'll make that 3rd. Righto?
The 3rd was the
school buses.
Robin gives me writings.
Yeah. The kids going to exercise our massive amount of influence on local government remit decision making. So is someone prepared to move that? Councillor Mailing, seconded. Councillor Dowler. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much for that somewhat tortuous process. Yeah, Mailing and Dowler. Right, Mike, on to more exciting and simple topics. Council Debenture Trust Deed Amendments, Local Government Funding Agency Security Stock.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. The debenture trust deed is the way council secures its borrowings. The Mayor, at the end of the public forum, sort of pointed out that we don't secure our borrowing over people's properties. We don't secure it over council assets either. So the debenture trust deed is the mechanism we use for securing our borrowing. And what it does is it effectively provides for a charge over future income. So this report covers the proposed changes to the deed. That's to streamline the LGFA borrowing processes and reduce administration cost. So now every time we borrow from the LGFA, we have to do a whole lot of paperwork. This reduces that paperwork because we'll have a global security stocks certificate. We won't be issuing one every time we borrow. There's also noted in the report some central government initiated changes to come. That will reduce the burden on the Chief Executive. We currently have to have a Section 118 certificate that says we've complied with all the Local Government Act and the requirements of Council. It's signed off by the Chief Executive. For borrowing from the LGFA only, they'll be able to delegate that down. That will take some pressure off the Chief Executive, because one of the paperwork challenges is getting the security stock deed signed off, getting the paperwork signed off with a CE. Less of an issue probably for this council, but if you happen to be Auckland, Wellington, one of the big metros, getting time with the CE is a little challenging. So in short, we're asking you to delegate authority to staff and to councillors to sign off any amendments to the trustee. We've given you a sample of likely amendments that need to be worked through with our trustee. I'll take the report as read. It is a little complex simply because of the nature of the trustee, but what we're requesting is relatively straightforward, and we want to improve that administration, reducing council costs. This has been with the LGFA Shareholders Council. I've been working on this for about 5 years, so I'm pleased to be here before you today, putting the proposal.
Thanks very much, Mike. So open for comment, questions of Mike or moving and seconding. Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mike, for the report. And of course, yeah, as you've just said, you're on this shareholder council. I guess it has the support of the full council now that they've got to this final position. If it's taken that long to get there, we hope they've got it correct by and large. Do you have any further comment around that? Was there any pushback or areas of concern?
No, this has the full support of the Shareholders Council recommendation to shareholders. Of course, it affects wider groups than shareholders because some people borrow from the LGFA, sign the guarantee, but they're not shareholders.
Right. So we have an advantage in that we are shareholders as well. So with that, I'm happy to move the resolutions as required for this paper.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Bryant. Councillor Mailing.
I'm happy to second. The LGFA is one of the best things local government has ever been involved in. It's roughly saves you 2 percentage points or nearly on your borrowing right across the whole of the district, or no, the whole of the country, and you don't have to deal with commercial banks to the same extent. And if this simplifies the process and makes it easier and saves some money, that's a benefit to ratepayers. So the LGFA, if you look at our borrowing, has been a huge benefit to ratepayers in this district. I think we did it in about 2012, Barry, and we were one of the founding members. So I'm happy to second on that occasion, and I just think it's a great benefit for us.
Thank you, Councillor Mailing. Councillor Kinnermont.
Thank you. The bit up there authorises, just at the bottom there, the execution by 2 elected members. That there is just to give it some sort of separation. And is there any liability or any?
Mike.
So that's the legal requirement. Staff can't execute a deed, but the mayor and a council officer and 2 elected members can. So it's simply to fulfill the requirements because the change to the debenture trust deed is by way of a deed.
Pretty much every legal arrangement we enter into is signed off by 2 elected members, usually myself plus 1 other. It's often Stuart, but it doesn't have to be, depending on availability and timing and who's around. So, but that is pretty much that we sign and initial and unfathomable number of pages to ensure that we meet that legal requirement. And that's leases and deeds and contract, all sorts of things. So pretty much the standard practice to ensure there's the whole of organisation sign off.
So that's one step removed from that's fine. Is there any liability or responsibility put on you two because of that?
Well, understanding what you're signing. So, basically you usually get a little covering note that says, this is what it entails. This is the key purpose. Like I say, often they're leases, licenses, all sorts of arrangements. I don't think it comes with a personal responsibility that if but I guess it's perhaps never been tested.
Mr. Mayor. No, the execution of the deed in accordance with the council resolution doesn't come with any personal responsibility.
Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thanks for that. Just a quick question of Mike. So it says there in 4.1 about his borrowing multiple tranches of debt from our GFA. Can you just update me on how often Tasman District Council actually borrows these multiple tranches?
Mike.
Typically, we will be borrowing both months of the year, depending on what our cash flow looks like. Obviously, the months in which we get rates coming or the quarterly rates payments, less reason to borrow. We manage our cash flow. So some months we may borrow twice from the LGFA. Other times we're lining up with the LGFA bond issues, which go out roughly every 6 weeks.
Okay, thanks for that. And my second question, if I may.
Yes.
Oh,
Councillor
okay.
Walker, you may.
Yeah, thank you. I see that it's going to be charged against the council's treasury cost centre. How many other things get put into that cost centre?
Mike, the Treasury Cost Centre gets the interest income from obviously our term deposits. It gets the borrowing costs of our borrowing, so they go in there. It also gets the charge from PricewaterhouseCoopers for the Treasury advice. It gets any legal costs around negotiating bank arrangements. So we're about due to do a review of our transactional banking, the cost in relation to that. And also any matters like this around the debenture trust deed go in there. So there's a limited number of items all related to Treasury that get charged to the Treasury Cost Centre. It recovers its costs through the interest rate that it charges on internal loans. And it also incurs some costs itself from the interest it pays on internal credit balances. So it comes out through those mechanisms.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Walker, and thanks, Mike, for the answer. Leonie?
Through the Mayor, just to clarify too, we, to Councillor Walker, we borrow it ahead of the capital program. So say we're going to deliver, you know, what we were set 65 million, we don't borrow that on day one, we borrow it as we need it. So that we're not incurring those interest costs until we actually really need it. So that's why these transactions, it might seem a lot, but actually it's quite a strategic approach in common across councils.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. Thanks for that report. When I couldn't sleep last night, it really helped. I just want to check because, you know, going through this, I can understand the logic, but there's nothing mentioned about are there any risks that come out of this? And so can we clarify the risks if we do it?
Mike?
There's no identified risks. This is really allowing us to do a more administratively streamlined process than the current one, and that saves us costs.
Thank you. Unless there's anything further, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Next up, Lacan. Amendments to the delegations register. Welcome, Lise, as well. I'll come over to you, Lacan, to introduce, add anything you wish to in relation to the item.
Thank you, sir. Kia ora. This report seeks delegations under the Resource Management Act to a new position of Principal Advisor, Environmental Assurance. I take the report as read and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Open for comments, questions, feedback, and or moving and seconding. It is a fairly administratively simple thing, I think, with the creation of a new position, just to amend the delegations register accordingly. Councillor Murray.
Based on your, thank you, Mr. Mayor, based on your brilliant summary, I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Kinnermont.
I'll second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Greening.
Yeah, it's a new role. I'm just trying to get clarity around what the role is for. It seems to be globally inserted into nearly everything. So why does the general manager need a principal advisor given he's got heaps of different managers, team leaders, and if he goes on holiday, there's always an acting person coming in. So I'm just wondering why the principal advisor is there and why they need all this delegation.
Leonie.
So, Councillor Greening, the reason for the role, actually the role already exists, the person's already exists. We've just raised them up to be a principal advisor to the environmental assurance manager, but also working across council. We've got a lot of RMA changes, a TRMP. This person in the role has already been providing a huge amount of support, and they led a team, and it was just there was just too much work for this one person. So we've actually lifted that up, and there's a person within the team who will then move up into that role. So it's not actually increasing FTE, it's actually just moving them into a role where they've got a little bit more more individual, not having to deal with team members and so forth. But yeah, we've got a huge amount of change coming, and the person isn't actually on any more money either. So, and the why they need a delegation is it's just actually so they can do their day-to-day job, and when they move quite often into the acting role, they've already got those delegations.
So does that mean that there is a gap lower down if everyone's shuffling up?
Councillor Greening, yes, we've got lots of gaps. We are struggling to fill some of our consenting gaps. So we've had vacancies sitting in there for quite some time. So in terms of the person moving up, having more team leader responsibilities, that does leave a bit more of a gap, but we're managing the workload as we do every day in the consenting space.
And just a second question, in the earlier item that we were speaking to, page 261, there was reference to the group manager would be receiving delegation. Is that going to be proposed later, or is that in here?
Was
in relation to the Waimea Dam policy?
So different manager, different manager. So as opposed, so.
No, this is for the group manager. Yeah, different manager. But,
so different group manager. So the item in relation to the Waimea Dam
infrastructure.
Yep, correct. So the question is, which is a reasonable question, does the delegations register need to reflect the decision we made with the new policy in relation to industrial water users? Do we need to amend the delegations policy to reflect that role?
Through the chair, if the resolution was passed, we'll update the delegations register to include that delegation.
Okay, thank you. Did you get the answer to that question, Councillor Graney?
I assume it is coming at the next full council meeting then, is that right?
Yeah, so the delegations register will be updated accordingly, and if that requires a council resolution to confirm, then that will come to the next council meeting. Correct. Anything further? If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Next up, we have Treasury Report. James, welcome. Also struggling to sleep. Okay, so thanks, James, and Mike, if you've got any comments to add before I open it up for questions.
So as councillors know, this is a regular report. It's partly a compliance report. We're required to provide councillors with information about our borrowing program, our risk profile. I draw councillors' attention to the debt at the end of May, that net debt sitting at 263 million, but that excludes 82 million of borrowings that are on lent to Waimea Water Limited. So we continue, as you're all aware, to have an exposure to Waimea Water Limited. You might have noted from the graphs in the report, there's a decrease in borrowing in May, and that's seasonal. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, the quarterly rates are paid. May is one of the months we've received that income, and it causes a downward dip in our outstanding borrowings. So market conditions, they remain volatile. We have fixed 55 to 70% of our borrowings out towards the end of 2026. So we have some certainty. We do that to allow us to strike the rates for the annual plan with a reasonable assurance that we can meet the budget expectations around borrowing costs. That's shown on the graph on page 434 of your agenda. And I just reiterate, we continue to manage our cash flows carefully and to minimise our borrowing requirements. So you'll find us chasing up on debts, for example, quite quickly, making sure that wherever possible, we're getting the money into council to minimise our cash flow requirements. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mike and James. Open for questions. Councillor Manning and Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thanks for the report, Mike and James. I was just looking at the cost of borrowing over time, and it looks like it's just tracking down slightly, and I follow what the Reserve Bank states. But the volatility overseas and the events of the last couple of weeks don't necessarily help going forward. Would that be a fair comment?
Mike?
That would be correct. So that New Zealand conditions typically impact on the short end of our borrowing, the sort of 0 to 2 year space, and to some extent the 3 to 5 year space, but beyond 5 years, that's very much influenced by what's happening in the US and in the global markets.
Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thank you, Mayor King. Just thank you, Mike, and for the report. Just in relation to 1.7 and 1.8 on page 432, firstly, the Crown Irrigation repayments. Can you just confirm that the payments are yearly, or are they more often than that?
No, the repayments on the $10 million environmental loan happen every 5 years. Sorry?
But this is 25.5 million. So I'm not sure. This is the Crown Irrigation Investments interest-free facility.
Yeah, there's the $10 million facility that has a 5 year in increments, and the $80 million facility is also a 5 year increments, but like about 1.5 years later.
So at some stage we'll be paying more than the 2.5 million first tranche.
About a year and a half. So it'll be, imagine you're paying, say, a quarter of the 10 million, and then a year and a half later, a quarter of the 80 million, and then 3.5 years later.
So, what's the word? Decreases over time as the loan goes down.
That's right.
Like a traditional table loan type of arrangement. Mm-hmm. And then just in relation to the one for Port Tarakoe, what are the repayments on, no interest obviously is a real bonus, but what are the repayments on the total facility arrangement, 4.5 million?
Through the chair, the repayments, you actually have options on that one. The first 5 years interest free, and then you get to decide whether you want to start repaying or capitalise interest for a further 5 years, isn't it? 5 years. Then you start repaying.
Right. Interesting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dakey, then Councillor Greenie.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. 9.1 in the report mentions the LGFA, environmental, social and governance borrowing, where you could get a reduced rate for meeting criteria. These can be good or bad. It could provide opportunity to perhaps get a lower discount rate for, say, for solar panels on a building that's compliant, but it could also lead us to a place where we have to do excessive reporting to meet requirements of the group. As a shareholder or a part of the group, do we have an input to say, look, this model should be streamlined, it should suit this purpose, and we don't want to be dragged into having to analyse things to give reports to get a loan, because the idea is to benefit us, not to consume our time with the paperwork. Is that something we have an avenue to report back to the LGFA? Mike.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The Green Social and Sustainability Loan product that's issued by the LGFA is not mandatory. It does provide a 5 basis points lower interest rate, but that interest rate reduction is offset by the paperwork that is required if you don't already have systems in place that are providing the information. There have been a number of councils who take advantage of this. And obviously example is Wellington City for their new convention centre. That was a 5-star green building, and they wrapped that up as part of the whole process for that. At the moment, we do not have any GSS loans, and we would only bring them in where it was cost effective for us and where we had already built the necessary infrastructure to provide the information through to support those. I would, however, say that the LGFA, it's important for the long-term viability of the LGFA to be able to offer green bonds because that they are sought after within the market. And so there is some pressure on councils to identify the borrowing we're taking from the LGFA and what purposes we're putting it through to support that program for them. It has had extensive conversations at the LGFA Shareholders Council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Green and then Councillor Kinnermont.
Through the chair. Just looking at 4.1, the table there on the borrowing and the net interest, and it's indicated 11.1%, and then the possible limit is 25 million. In terms of that percent, what is the actual million figure? Is it 11 million worth of net interest that we're paying, or?
Through the chair, $11,083,246.
Random, brilliant. And is that percentage figure mapped against our 31 March 24 figures or against current figures?
Through the chair, these figures have to be against your latest audited ones, which for us will be the annual report to the 30th of June 2024.
Oh, 31 June, okay. Just that I was reading the asterisks below and it said annual report 2024 published 31 October 24. So you're saying June. So what you're saying the June 24 figures, or?
Yes, so the year you're talking about is July to June 1, but due to delays getting enough auditors to audit things and sign off things, 31st October was the earliest we could actually publish the report to the 30th of June. If you catch my drift.
So these figures are against last year's numbers, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So what's our trajectory at the moment then? Where are we at the moment? Do you know? Just generally, unaudited.
Mike.
Without pulling the detailed numbers, which I'm unable to do off the hand, my understanding is that we are in about the same position because while we've been running a deficit, we've also got borrowing at substantially similar levels. So we've had an uplift in income, we've had an uplift in borrowing, and the ratios are approximately the same.
And just one final question, 4.2, are you indicating that if we hit 2.84 million net debt, we're breaching one of our thresholds, and we're currently sitting at 262, which suggests we've only got 18 million net debt room?
Yes.
Yeah. I hope around the room people are saying this, because I mean it's probably highlighted in the next report exactly the financial predicament of this council. Thank you.
Mike.
Just to clarify for councillors, that's against council treasury policy limit. It's not against the LGFA borrowing limit. So we have headroom above the limits that we've set in our own treasury policy. They are more conservative.
Good clarification, Mike. Okay, thank you. Councillor Kinnermont.
Thank you. Through to me. Page 231 for 1.4. We're talking about Treasury, the internal bank, passing additional funding costs on the activities. I presume we're talking here about infrastructure activities and environmental activities. If I'm reading this correctly, does that have an effect on these activities to meet the annual plan budgets and outcomes?
Yes, that is correct. They have budgeted for a certain level of interest cost on their borrowings, and they've budgeted for a certain level of borrowing. That borrowing is primarily in the infrastructure areas, not in our regulatory areas. And so when the actual costs of borrowing come through and are allocated to them, that is likely to be higher than the budgeted costs that they have. So if they don't have cost offsets, they'll be running a deficit within their activity.
Okay, my question is, how does this affect the infrastructure team to fulfill the annual plan workload
So it's built into the budgets
It's
that we've
built in.
approved. It's included.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. Mover and seconder for the Treasury report. Move Councillor Mailing. Seconded Councillor Kinnemont. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Okay. Next up, we got risk report. Amy, welcome.
Morning. As well as the report, which I'll take as read, I thought it might be useful, given the Audit and Risk Committee was held last Thursday, to give a bit of an update on the discussions relating to this report at the Audit and Risk Committee. So as part of those discussions, we discussed the importance of improving the risk management report over time. And one of those things was recognising the need to provide additional detail on the strategic risks and how they're being managed, and on those mitigations and controls. And in particular, Audit and Risk asked for each of the risk owners to come to Audit and Risk and deep dive into those risks so they have a full understanding of those risks. An example of that would be the financial strategic risk, which is highlighted in this report, and in particular for that, what the mitigations might be. So in this instance, some of those mitigations include a focus on improved financial reporting and budgeting, and development of a financial roadmap, and financial training for budget holders. The Audit and Risk Committee also discussed the other very high risk, which was the disaster event, and they discussed reframing that risk. So that's currently around the occurrence of a disaster event, but to reframe it around preparedness for the disaster event so that we can ensure that we can take action around being prepared for the event and manage the risk in that frame. They also discussed whether or not climate change is adequately addressed within the disaster event risk. And so in the coming months, we'll be working on making sure that those risks are adequately framed and that the risk and mitigations are documented, and coming back to Audit and Risk with further information on all of those risks. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Thank you for the report. Open for questions, comments, feedback. Moving and seconding, Councillor Murray.
I think it was to be up, and that helps some of the explanation, I guess, in terms of what I was going to ask. So I just want to test some of the how you've assessed these risks. So I'm struggling with the community support versus our iwi partnership. So I'm just struggling in terms of the risk of having a really bad relationship with our wider community, and our risk of having a really bad relationship with our iwi partners, how that's been assessed differently. So one's sitting in a minor consequence, the other one's sitting in the moderate consequence line. So the criteria between minor and moderate, what is the difference between those two?
Apologies, I haven't got the definitions with me. I've actually got, both of those are currently sitting at a risk rating of medium, although iwi relationships are slightly higher. I feel it might be more appropriate for me to work with each of the risk owners and come back at the next meeting with a clear.
Yeah, and then if I go to page 442, page 3 on yours, in terms of just the matrix and the residual risks and whether you're going to treat and accept, sort of did answer in terms of natural disasters about the treatment, because I was struggling how you're going to treat a disaster event. But if that's now looking at preparedness, I get that. But the only one that we've accepted on there is the projects and programs, and I thought that would be the one we'd have most control to treat. I struggle with, and I guess if you're doing that for Audit and Risk, it'll come out. But what are the treatments? Whether you accept the risk, and what are you doing?
I'll through the chair, I'll respond to that. Projects have their own risk framework.
Yes.
So they do that independently. And so if a risk becomes an issue within a project, and it gets to be beyond the delegated authority of the project manager, then it would get escalated up to strategic risk as a project risk. So they're managed within that project space. Any risks. So when you have a project, you basically you work out what all the risks are going to be and how you will mitigate it if it presents itself. Then that's when it becomes an issue. And so within the delegations that you have within that project, you control and you manage that issue. It's only when it gets beyond those delegations that it comes up.
Yeah, so if we take health and safety the same, because you've got to have your own systems in terms of each area of work and each group and each task, you're going to have health and safety risk assessment matrices for that. But yet in this, we're still treating, we're not accepting. So that would be the same with your project. You've got your own risk management for your project costs. So I don't get the difference between the treat and the accept. So maybe you can just send me something.
I can quickly address it through the chair. So with projects and programs, we actually have a lot of controls in place. So we've got a lot of reporting, we've got a dedicated team for some of the projects and for IE. So there's a lot of controls in place. So while there is risk there, we've accepted the risks and said that the treatments we have in place are doing a lot of the work that we need them to do. But actually, there's always inherently risk within projects, and we just need to maintain it. But I do think as we do more work on it, describing the risks and putting the mitigations in detail, it will be easier to explain that and to document that for you.
Okay, thank you. Happy to move.
Thank you. So move, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Kinnermonk. Yep.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Councillor Murray here started me going down a track. Iwi relationships. Impact or loss significant from an inability to establish and maintain successful relationships with iwi. How does that affect our ability to work when relationships are can have positive days? You know, you love your husband or wife one day, and next day they are. Surely relationships are up and down. So how can we define whether it's a medium or high from one day to the next? When we've got legislation that says we must liaise, coordinate with them anyway. So I don't see why we need this actually in here at all.
No. Oh.
Leonie.
Through the Mayor. Firstly, Amy and Deirdre are here. They manage the risk framework. It's not actually their risk. Just making sure that's very clear. Why we want to keep our eye on this? Well, firstly, it's one of our internal priorities is our relationship with iwi and maintaining that. There's many things at play that we have, and in terms of we've got the partnership agreement, we're cultural training of staff. There's a whole lot of things because it doesn't take a lot to lose that trust and confidence. And if we do, then it makes our job so much harder and your job so much harder. So, you know, in all the resource consenting space, we need really good support from our iwi, and we have a great relationship. If we took it off of here, then you could argue that we haven't got our eyes across it. And we have to. So these strategic risks are entwined into everyday working environment, you know, health and safety, etc. So it's one of those things that if it fell over and we lost our relationship, then it would impact us and it would cost us more money. So that's why it is strategic. Does that help? Or hinder?
Yeah, no. Relationships innate. Where what we're talking about is communications timely, efficiently, in the right place, right time with the right people, not specifically a relationship. That's where I'm probably getting at.
So at the end of the day, the relationship, the same reason community's on there in terms of relationships. Yes, they're up and down, and some people, as you might have heard this morning, not, you know, our biggest fans, other people possibly, and everyone in between. But you have to keep working on them, don't you? And the risk, particularly around every relationship, and the same with the community, it has a whole lot of flow-on effects to our actual day-to-day work. So whether it's a project and it relates to land acquisition or it relates to resource consent, if we need a resource consent for a major project, and let's just use one pretty large one, Motueka Wastewater Treatment Plant, and one of the key relationships we have to manage is both the Motueka community in general and the iwi relationship for that particular project. It in itself is the single biggest project that the council is going to be considering over the next 10 years. both of those things are critically important, and working on them, and the consequences of losing that relationship on a project like that are potentially enormous. So I think that's why it sits in the risk register as it does. And Councillor Mara asked the question previously as to the relationship between the relationships. And I think Amy was going to, again, come back, having talked to the people who hold responsibility for those two things, and just clarify why there is a difference, if there is, why there is. So. Councillor Greening.
Yeah, I just wanted to dig into the disaster event risk, and also maybe look at health and safety. I'll take the financial risk as already highlighted. I think that's pretty evident. But is the disaster event risk taking into consideration the financial constraints on council as the debts gap squeezes and gets narrower, and our ability to respond? Is that being factored into this risk category? And is the cost to the community also factored into this? Because we talk about high cost of mitigation, that's for council.
Amy.
Yes, so as I've started working with Rob Smith, who is the owner of the disaster event risk, and one of the things we've highlighted is a potential gap with our financial reserves to responding in an emergency. So that's something we're looking at, make sure that we're capturing as we assess the risk.
And are you also taking into consideration the mitigations? Like we had, you've mentioned earthquakes, but we often have regular flooding events. Heavy rain, Gabrielle, I think 2013 was followed by 2017 in terms of major flooding, which affected a number of properties. And council did have on its agenda investment in stormwater to mitigate the risk for the community and the cost to the community, and also for council, I suppose. Are you factoring in those mitigations and the risk of constantly delaying and not responding to them and mitigating them? How are you factoring in that?
Amy.
Yeah, so it's a bit, it perhaps sounds a bit simplistic. There's a model called the bow tie. And what you do is you have all the things that might cause the event to happen and all the things that might be the consequence of the event happening. And then you look at what you need to put in between those. So what you put in between to stop the causes and to mitigate the effects. And so what we do is we look at all of those things and we put those mitigations or controls in place to stop the consequences being as bad as they might be, and the causes to prevent them as much as possible. So yes, those things that you mentioned, yes, we will include those, perhaps not necessarily as specifically as some of the examples you've given, but definitely those types of categories will be considered as part of assessing the risk.
So for example, a decision for the council to invest, for example, in the new bridge to provide stormwater capacity and the balance of the Borks Creek, or the Motueka Stop Bank upgrade would count, as would a decision to not proceed with a particular set of mitigation effects for whatever reasons, probably financial. So both things would be considered.
Of course, because of course mitigations cost money, and so the decision is where to spend your money.
That's
okay,
right.
cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. My other question was just in relation to the health and safety. I was just trying to get my head around the high risk rating there. Are you indicating that we don't have adequate processes in place? Because that's what we're supposed to be doing, right? Putting in place processes, procedures that show that we are managing it. Are you saying because it's such a high risk that we don't have adequate processes in place? Or are you just flagging there's always a high risk of someone getting injured? Because I thought it was about making sure that we've got the right processes in place, and if we haven't, that's the risk.
Amy.
I think it's, I'm not going to say both of those things, but definitely health and safety is always a risk, and always a high risk. However, we have a health and safety team in place who are making big improvements to our processes and our systems, and we have and are building much better controls than we had previously. Not to say that they were bad controls, but we definitely believe we're on a trajectory to have a much stronger health and safety presence through council.
So are you indicating at the moment that we don't have adequate processes in place then, given you've given it a high risk? And that we need to be shifting investment further into ensuring we've got adequate controls and processes in place? That's the signal I'm getting from this report.
That's probably the wrong signal, Councillor Greening. Look, we do have lots of processes in place, and we had quite a small health and safety team. So we've actually added an FTE into that area. We have to invest in those areas to mitigate our risks. So we've got more people across council who can actually, they have to go out across 400 staff in multiple locations, with people working alone with sometimes dangerous chemicals, people working on the roadside. Yeah, we've got so many risks out there. We think we manage them pretty well. We can always do better. It's always high risk. We sometimes have staff who may not follow good procedures, and we get reporting about those near misses, etc. So I actually think we're in a much better place today than we probably were 5 years ago. But that's because we've been actually invested in the resources to help deliver a good health and safety system.
Yeah, and I think that given that the liability with this actually rests very squarely on the shoulders of the CEO, ironically, under the health and safety legislation, we are absolved of liability under the, which I've never been a fan of, however that is the case. So the fact that Leonie is comfortable that our risk management processes are adequate but still need work is, I guess, the strongest endorsement that we can have, given that's where the liability lies.
So it sounds like, though, it needs a lot more work because it's rated as a high risk. That's what I'm trying to get to. Well, if it isn't,
through the Mayor, in every register I've ever seen of a council, it is a high risk. And the Audit and Risk Committee and our members sit on many audit and risk committees, and not one of those would have it as a low risk, because we need to constantly keep our eyes on it, and there's always a risk because we can't mitigate them. If we mitigated every risk, people wouldn't leave the building. We wouldn't walk across the road. We wouldn't do what we do. So, if we put this down as a medium risk, then we're saying that our staff aren't doing their jobs. Essentially, they couldn't get out there and do it.
Well, I would have thought if it's a medium risk, we've actually put in place great controls and great processes, and we've mitigated that risk. That's the trajectory we'd like to see in our risk report, surely. Isn't it the signal you're trying to give?
If we were a factory making peas and carrots, we might be able to mitigate every risk. We get across multiple functions. So, and I would, if I wanted to mitigate all risks, I'd probably have a high level of staff in that area. I would have more PPE gear. I would have wrapped everyone in bubble wrap. But, last thing I want to do is not send someone home from work. So it's always going to be a high risk. No matter what we put in place, there's always a risk someone doesn't follow procedure or something happens. We're talking about people here.
Okay, thank you. So I think that has been a good question and well answered. So anything further in relation to Councillor Maru? So, no, yes, no, that's fine. I'll check if there are any other questions before I come back to you for your right of reply. And just noting, I'll come to Councillor McKenzie. We are finishing, well, not finishing, but we are breaking at 12:30 so that we have the opportunity to interact with the youth councillors next door. And then we'll come back and conclude most likely the in-committee items post the lunch break. So, Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you very much, through you, Chair. Look, I just wanted to take the opportunity to actually congratulate Amy and Leonie on the progress that we've made with regards to the risk system in TDC. I mean, this is not, in my experience, this is not easy work to lead within a large organisation, and by and large, the success of it largely comes down to the culture and the leadership of the organisation. So through my time on the Risk and Assurance Committee, I think that this is really evolving in a great way. So I wanted to acknowledge Amy's contribution in that and the work that she's leading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie, and I'd reiterate that across the public sector, the private sector, businesses, small, medium and large, health and safety is a massive challenge, and so much of it does come down to culture and people and leadership. And that is really challenging in an environment where you're also facing the demand request / direction from council to cut costs, trim staff, etc. So balancing the two things, maintaining a healthy, positive, constructive culture in relation to health and safety is crucial. And look, I reiterate the fact we've come a long way in the last 3 years in terms of the reporting that we get, the information we receive, the input of the Audit and Risk Committee into that, and particularly the relatively small team that Amy leads to try and get across all of the risks that we face as a council, given Leonie's point about just how broad and widespread our roles and responsibilities are, and the number of people we have operating out in the field across an inordinate number of different, whether it's building sites or rivers monitoring or compliance, etc. It's a huge role to keep across. So just reiterate what Councillor McKenzie said, and please pass on, Amy, to your team our appreciation. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to finish this some of the time. So I had more questions than I had in a couple of reports back for full council, but I've zoomed in and watched Audit and Risk, and I've read the confidential minutes. I've had more assurance in terms of the stuff behind the background, but just wanted to say in terms of health and safety risk, it's not you guys that own that. So that the organisation owns that, and while you present the report and get all the questions from councillors, I realise it's not you, but to Councillor Greening's point, I watch those meetings and read the minutes from the Audit and Risk. I am interested to see the lever come down from a likely major outcome for health and safety and a possible one, because as you mitigate, we must be moving. It still will be in the high risk range, but just to see that improvement in terms of the ratings. And coming back to the iwi versus community, I absolutely think iwi are absolutely in the right box in terms of priority, but the community, not a segment of the community, not a small segment of the community, not some unhappiness in the community, but the community as a whole, I can't see why that wouldn't be, especially if it's likely at moderate risk if we can't get it right. Because at the end of the day, if we can't be here for the community as a whole, or the majority, then we're doing something absolutely wrong. So just encourage you to have those conversations to move it across. But again, I understand that there's people that own these risks behind you guys, and that you present the overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. With that, I will put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thanks, Amy. Next up, Waimea Limited quarterly report. Mike. We should have stuck all your reports together, Mike. Note to self next time. Request that all your reports go one after another, so you don't have to be the jack in the box.
Noted, Mr. Mayor. This is a straightforward routine report. These reports have become somewhat less important in terms of we're now in the operations mode for Waimea Water Limited. So they are just giving you an update on how the company is progressing against its objectives and what its results are looking like for the quarter. This report is for the March quarter. I am requesting council agree to a slightly different approach in the future. While we'll still bring the half-yearly reports and the annual reports through to council, I'm suggesting that the quarterly reports for September and March are circulated to councillors. All of the reports, of course, are available to the public as soon as Waimea Water Limited publishes them, just to reduce the staff time in writing reports when there's likely to be very little movement in terms of what's happening within the organisation. Quite happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions? If there is not, someone like to move its receipt. Moved Councillor Shellcrass, seconded Deputy Mayor Bryant. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Mayor's update report. So fairly self-explanatory. I would just like to emphasise my thanks to everyone's involvement in the annual plan. These get inherently more challenging. Councillor Greening's pointed out the financial challenges that I think every council in the country is facing to a greater or lesser degree. And given the roles and responsibilities upon us, particularly as a unitary authority, looking around the challenges that a number of other councils are having or have had, and the solutions that they've been proposing through their annual plans, I think on balance, we've arrived at a reasonable, if not what I would call acceptable figure So it is, I don't think it's certainly not a secret that local government is facing a significant number of challenges. As I say, both financially, but also just the continuing uncertainty around the actual environment in which we operate. I think someone mentioned in relation to a previous agenda item that alongside the Ministry of Education, we are creatures of statute. So much of what we do is defined for us by the laws, the legislation, the regulation that we have to work under and or implement. And increasingly the uncertainty of that. And it's probably best illustrated by the announcement, I think, yesterday, where the Minister of everything, but including housing and RMA and transport, has proposed the power to effectively override council decisions in relation to consenting and planning. So that's another layer of uncertainty for both us and anyone who is going through the process. So I guess that's in some way illustrative. We've been inundated. The latest one we've got is going for housing growth. So RMA reform in its various phases, massive changes in philosophy, huge impacts on communities, pretty short timeframes to turn around our response and feedback, huge time commitment on our staff and ourselves to provide that feedback. The extent to which it may be or may not be taken account of, I guess, remains to be seen. I think the one thing we can be satisfied with is that, generally speaking, submissions we make are both appreciated, and where we point out specific areas where we think improvement can be made to legislation that's being considered, then we have had some success. And I think for us, the focus on all of this feedback in relation to RMA change has to focus on not debating the philosophical, because that's a ship that's largely sailed, but focusing on the details where we think we can improve the outcomes, both for our role in administrating that legislation, but also the communities that are going to have to work and live underneath it. And going for housing growth, for those of you who have particular interest in planning and the impact on the communities that you represent, be that Mapua or Motueka or Brightwater and Wakefield and Richmond, I think it's kind of incumbent on us to have a look at it, understand what it means, and then provide good feedback on the detail, either that we support and agree with, or those areas where we think it can be improved or changed. So, because that has massive implications. So with that, I'm happy to move that my report be received. Councillor Walker, seconded Councillor Kinnamonts. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for your report. And yeah, I was going to put my hand up second anyway. Someone bit me to that. I just want to, if you're able, to expand a bit more on 3.7, whereby you've met with the Salvation Army to talk about opportunities for social housing in our region. Is there anything else that you can actually share, what that looked like, what are the opportunities, and how do we partner with that to obviously help with the housing crises that we sit in? First question. Then my second one is, can we have an update on when the road vesting with Wakatu Incorporation has landed post your meeting?
Yeah, I can do both of those things. So if I back the truck up one step, previously, Kaingora responsible for delivering central government's housing, so house building, i.e. state houses or social housing or a range of different housing opportunities. This government changed in philosophy, so Kaingora are no longer responsible for delivering new housing, that they've been put back into the managing existing housing responsibilities. They have nationally selected 5 entities that they will fund instead of Kaingora to deliver social housing. One of those is the Salvation Army. Interestingly, one of them I think is also maybe Habitat for Humanity, but Nelson Tasman Housing Trust is not one of the selected. So there's a lot of change going on in there. So really and Salvation Army historically in this region have not been major players in developing social housing, more in Nelson City, but much less out here. In other parts of the country, they are very big players. They have quite a large portfolio of social housing. So it was really just an introductory kind of conversation between myself and Mayor Nick Smith for them to outline what they're proposing. They have a number of proposals across the region that they're contemplating and considering. Again, more in Nelson City than out here, but there are some out here. So it's quite a change in approach for the government to fund these 5 community housing providers. They did indicate their willingness to work in conjunction with some of the other community housing providers who may not have been part of that 5 and hence not be able to access the funding. So it's a bit of a case of work on. We obviously made it clear that as we have with CHIPS now, like we're keen to work in partnership to try and provide pathways. However, it was also very clear, and I made it very clear that previously, if Kāinga Ora have built social housing, we have charged them development contributions. We have a policy of not charging CHIPS. Now, that policy was developed before the government decided to use CHIPS as the vehicle. So, and if it's a substantial number of houses, it has a substantial impact if we are not recovering development contributions. So that is something that we are going to have to keep a very close eye on, and we will have to consider amending our policy if it appears as though, because the only other place that funding can be made up for is obviously via ratepayers. So it was a really good, constructive meeting. They've got some quite exciting plans in different parts of the region. But yeah, very big change in the approach for the delivery of social housing. And the second one was, we met with the Chief Financial and CEO of Wakatu, and we've agreed to, I have agreed to try and instigate a meeting with the Minister of Everything, the same previous minister that we were talking about, so to discuss whether or not they can make the pathway forward to getting access to government funding for roads that are not vested progress more simply. Currently, we've been directed to go through the Te Ura Whenua legislation, which is and have the said roads declared Māori roads, in which case NZTA will fund them, but that is potentially a long, potentially costly and uncertain process to go through. So we basically agreed just to continue working together through our different channels to try and come up with a sensible outcome that gives us access to the funding and provides them the opportunity to develop housing in Motueka as we've previously discussed under the policy. So no magic outcome, but an agreement to continue working on it.
I appreciate the update. Thanks.
All good. Anything else? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. I'll come across to CEO Leone, and then we will break and come back and do the in-committee items post the lunch break. Leone.
The Mayor. I take the report as read. I see that the Mayor and I have doubled up on our Ngāti Waewae visit, and I guess it's because it was an absolute highlight and to be invited to the marae, which was absolutely amazing. You can see by the photo that's just the outside, but the inside was inspirational. It was a great discussion, and we also we've actually got a plan forward about certain things we might do better. A lot of it's around bringing them to the table, and the fact that the constraints they have as well in terms of their time. We need to think about that clearly. A bit about LTP planning. In fact, I was at the regional intersectional, oh gosh, it sounds too intersectional forum on Tuesday, and we talked about with the 3 councils about bringing them to the table together as a region, as Te Tauihu, around LTP and their aspirations, rather than trying to do it individually. And I'm leading a piece of work around that as well. And we also that was also brought up at the hui with the iwi chairs yesterday. So happy to take any other questions.
Okay, open for questions. Councillor Hill, and then Councillor Green.
I don't have a question so much, but I think the matter raised earlier around iwi relationships and
I guess we all have a responsibility to understand our legislative responsibilities in that way. But, you know, I've been here for 5.5 years, I guess, and we've spoken about Ngāti Waewae often in our conversations around various iwi thinking around different things or how we're partnering or working or all the things we do. And it was just very good to go and meet with the Ngāti Waewae hapu. And but I think it was it was a measure of our council, I think, and how we've progressed in terms of our maturity in that way, that you know, we had a strong delegation go along, and big strong delegation of Ngāti Rārua as well, I noticed. But you know, so there were a lot of extra things that happen because we're with Ngāti Waewae. Amazing complex they've got set up there. Honestly, it's just fantastic. I did ask them about their funding and how they pulled it off. But you know, but also just being there with our iwi partners, and in this case, it was, you know, just a strong representation of Ngāti Rārua. A lot develops and grows in that, and so the conversations we were having in the whare around local government generally, Tasman district, the issues we have, things that come down from central government that we and the other councils down there and various iwi and hapu are involved with. You're just having that conversation go on there together was very good. So, and you know, I was thinking of it as being like a first phase in a way, and then what are our next steps? So, just very sort of strengthening, really, visit. So, a nod to those that have worked away here for years, maturing us and developing our ability to be good partners. Yeah, it was great, and great kai, of course.
Yeah, no, it was a very enjoyable visit. And I think just backing up on that relationship thing, I think our good relationship actually enables other people to have good relationships as well. And often if we don't have one, the implication is not just on the council and the way it actually flows right through to people applying for resource consents, businesses trying to get things up and running, because then they run into an obstacle or a roadblock, which if we can assist, then that makes life easier for a whole lot of other people trying to do things in the community as well, particularly under the current legislative settings that we have now. That's all obviously up for debate at a national level and remains to be seen where that ends up. But it was a very good visit. And as Leonie says, as I'm sure you all know, you are not able to take photos inside the whare, but if you ever had the chance to visit Arahura Marae, and it is absolutely mind-boggling the inside of that marae body. So if you get the chance, take it up. Councillor Greening.
Yeah, can I ask for the Logoima information? I know it's very brief, and I know you've provided a link which goes to the website showing the graph, but it would be, I think, important given public interest and also historical data that it's included in the report as opposed to just a link to the website, because website content can suddenly disappear. Could that graph that you're providing a link to, the monthly comparison graph, be included in your report rather than just a link to it, please?
Through the Mayor, we could. I would imagine the website is far more up to date than anything in my report, because when I write this, it's quite often it's delayed. So for latest information, actually the website's the best place. I don't think, and if it suddenly disappears, that's worrying. I haven't heard of anything suddenly disappearing. I'm looking at a general counsel over there. So yes, I could, but it would be out of date.
Yeah, so that's fine. You can provide a link to more updated, but I think it's important that you just include the graph in your report just as a historical tracking process, and the trajectory when you look at the graph certainly is showing some improvement a little bit. So we'll see how we go. But thank you.
Thanks for that feedback.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you for your report. I'm just wondering, given the conversation that the Mayor had with his report, and that you've been discussing working with developers during May, have you set into the work program reviewing that policy regarding development contributions and chips, because the impacts coming into the next long-term plan could be quite significant if we don't move on that quite quickly. Where is that going into the program, or when are you going to decide whether that's going to hit the program?
To the Mayor, given we've probably just recently updated the policy, we can do another round. I've had to look at our work program and our priority. Actually, in terms of the social housing, it takes a bit to get you registered as a CHIP, and that might not necessarily be the best vehicle. We do have to assess that. Developers I've been talking about in this report are specifically people who are outside of the trusts, etc. Just trying to understand some of the challenges that they're having through the consenting and just the general processes around infrastructure and so forth. But in terms of the DC policy, we've just updated it.
I might agree with that, and we got quite significant criticism from a couple of particular submitters, and potentially one councillor, over the cost of going through that process and whether it was necessary or not to redo it again. But all I can assure you is, so I've had conversations with Dwayne in terms of who kind of leads that area. He's acutely aware of the potential risk, and I think if it became obvious that it was going to have a significant impact relatively soon, I am sure he will bring back a report to look at changing it. Otherwise, the next opportunity will be the review of the long-term plan by the next council. So I think it is very much a watch this space kind of conversation, but to be very, very aware of the possible impacts.
So clarification, if someone lodged a resource consent now, they'll be under the current rules where...
Correct.
Right. That is quite a significant risk.
It is potentially. So well, I'm more than open to the council requesting Leonie to just consider that risk and whether there is something that council needs to do more succinctly, quickly, and report back to us. Because yes, I acknowledge that there is the potential to, as happens every time we change development contribution amounts, because there's always a delay between our decision and the actual impact, you see a lot of consents get applied for, as we've seen this time, given they have a 5-year lapsing period. And so, yeah, it's definitely something we need to manage. So I think if we leave it with Leonie to have that conversation internally and provide us feedback. Okay, thank you. Councillor Dowler.
Just a comment from coming to me more and more actually regarding the 5.7, the costs of the court case. The crowd out there, I've got my own opinion, but the crowd out there is saying that the cost should be paid by those who incurred them. That's all they're saying. So I just thought I'd pass that on.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? I'm happy to move. Move Deputy Mayor Bryant, seconded Councillor Hill. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. So we'll now break for lunch, and we'll come back. Do you want to go into confidential now? Okay. So someone move, we go into confidential. Move Councillor Hill, seconded Councillor Dowler. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. And we'll reconvene at 10 past